Good morning,
Oh,
Exiles, and welcome back for another Q&A session with none other than Chris Wilson. Good morning, Chris. Thank you for joining us once again.
oh, thanks for being here as well.
So, Path of Exile gets to be so many things. It has gotten to be so many things over the years. Do you ever really feel like you just don't need to make another game in any other genre because you can just make a league that is that genre? Like make a farming league or a city building league or a roguelike league?
I guess that's one perk of the job, but we always try to make sure that when we're designing our leagues, they're games that fit within the idea of being an action RPG. Like they have to involve you killing monsters and finding items in order to fit within Path of Exile.
Yeah, so even when you're farming, you're killing monsters, or even when you're fishing, you're killing monsters. I look
Yeah,
forward to
there's
the
a
one where we pull
bit of an
monsters out of the
agenda
water.
there, Ziggy.
How do you gain access to the new Forbidden Sanctum?
So basically, every area you're playing in has a portal that gives you access to it. It basically takes you to the next room that you're playing in the Sanctum in your current run.
Ah, okay. So to clarify, then the Sanctum's divided into rooms, each with their own encounter, and then floors with a boss at the end of each. And then there's the whole Sanctum itself, which is multiple floors.
That's right. So the Sanctum itself has 4 floors, each one guarded by a boss at the end, with the ultimate boss fight at the end of the 4th floor. And each of the floors has 8 rooms. And so a maximum length Sanctum run would be 32 consecutive rooms, which you'd play out over potentially 32 maps. But it's worth emphasizing that, as with most roguelikes, you don't just install it and then happily play through to the end in one go. It's something that you get further and further with each run as you get better meta progression, as you learn more about it, and as you have good versus bad runs. A lot of the rewards you're getting along the way. And so it's entirely fine to play the Sanctum a few floors in and then fail and play again. And it's still a rewarding experience, assuming you don't gamble on pushing the rewards right to the end of the entire Sanctum run. But it's unlikely you're going to choose to do that until you are really confident in your ability to do this run particularly well.
Yeah, so I saw the reward options are like take a tiny reward now, take a decent reward at the end of the floor. So you're like, oh, I can make it 3 or 4 more rooms. And then
Yep.
there's the really big one at the end as well. And there's
Yes.
stack, right, if you get a bunch of them.
That's right, and it was kind of funny because in the live stream I said this is a massive reward, and we're showing like a few chaos orbs as the reward. So of course, chat memed that as much as they could. The thing is, okay, so let's do some math here, right? It's 32 rooms in a Sanctum run, and deferrals make up something like 40%. Deferral is what I'm internally calling the offer reward here. It makes up around 40% of the rooms.
Wow.
And so if you're offered an average of a whole bunch of chaos orbs, I think the example there had like 18, but obviously the currency numbers will vary a lot, then and you were to defer those entirely to the end of the Sanctum run, you would be getting hundreds of currency. And it can have divines, mirrors, and various other stuff in there moderately rarely. So it's entirely possible that were you to defer everything to the end in a big gamble, you could receive a very, very large payout. It's set up so that the rewards for immediately taking them are still worthwhile. If you play the Sanctum and just took the reward immediately, it's a decent amount of currency that makes it worthwhile on top of the other rewards you're getting. Obviously, players want to min-max stuff. They want to get the best result, but the best result may pragmatically say, I'm going to take this reward that's in a shorter time frame. Plus, okay, so anyone who's done economics or finance understands the concept of the time value of money. $1 now is worth more than $1 later because you can put it to use right now. And when these full Sanctum runs taking 30 maps, maybe getting a pile of chaoses, potentially some higher currency like Exalts and Divines, a few maps from now is actually better for your character development than getting a very large pile in 20 maps. Maybe, especially when there's a conditional element to that. It may be that getting something a few maps from now that you can then trade to get more progression is actually better for you. So there are a lot of hard decisions which we put on the table here for the players.
Let's talk the resolve mechanic. So to clarify, resolve is an independent health bar for
Yes.
the Forbidden Sanctum specifically. And when your resolve runs out, you're kicked out of the Sanctum dead or not, right?
That's correct. Now, I noticed the reaction when we're announcing the resolve system there is a lot of players said, why? As though this is a negative thing, but I want to have a chance to explain it. So
Explain.
we tried very hard initially
Why?
to work out a system here that
Explain.
works with your player life. Then there's no additional bars. The problem is, though, Path of Exile's player life fluctuates up and down rapidly. You're constantly healing yourself. You've got recovery. There's no persistence to this. Your player life is like how out of breath you are, if you see what I mean. It's a very brief, it's almost like your heartbeat to some extent. And so if we were to say, look, if you lose some life in this room, then when you come back into the next room, that life is going to be missing. So you've got a kind of a progression through the Sanctum. Then they just press 1 and heal themselves fully and carry on playing. And so our experiments where there's no meta progression in it do not function as a roguelike. There has to be a thing where you get worn down. The strategy you have to do in your Sanctum is work out how you are recovering your resolve. And there are lots of different ways. It's along the lines, I mean, it's as simple as if your resolve is lower than you'd like because the Sanctum one is one you're struggling with, then you have to start pathing through various things like fountains or choosing boons which enable more resolve recovery. And every time you have to choose something focusing on resolve recovery, you're implicitly losing some other thing you could be getting, like more rewards or a different axis of power. And so the degree to which you're struggling with the run forces you to focus on staying alive and not getting rewards. But conversely, this means if you're having a good run where you are not struggling at all, you can just kind of ignore your resolve and focus on becoming super powerful. And this works really well as a roguelike. And I would really encourage people to try it out before judging it based on the fact that it's an additional life bar. We don't add those kind of things, for no reason.
You actually touched on a topic I wanted to ask. So Resolve seems to reward high mobility play styles that can completely avoid attacks. So since mitigation doesn't affect resolve damage, how does it feel playing like a low mobility tanky melee character in the Sanctum? Won't you kind of just be failing runs due to chip damage that otherwise is not a threat to you?
We thought of that. So we've made it so that the resolve damage is lower if you're close to a target. Essentially, if you're melee and you're right in their face, then you take less resolve damage than if you're further away. And so attacks are also very telegraphed. And that means that even if you're a tanky melee character, you have an opportunity to get out of the way. You probably should consider at least a Quicksilver Flask if you're going into the Sanctum so that you have some ability to respond to stuff, but that's normal Path of Exile play. The other thing is, if your build is one where you're expecting to take a lot of resolve damage, just spec your relics into resolve recovery. Relics are your meta progression that you can choose. They're locked in for the Sanctum run, and you keep them between runs. So if you feel that you want more resolve recovery, get relics that do that. And if you're a character that's given up mobility, has some ability at the expense of maybe less damage or less tankiness or something, then there are other things they can specialize their relics into if they have enough resolve.
So to clarify on the sanctified relics, these are the ones where the effects work on your character outside of the Sanctum.
That's correct. Yeah, both inside and outside. So these are a permanent power progression for characters. Wow. They're hard to get. They're very end game. We're talking late maps here, and they're obviously due to the fact that they can't be crafted and can't be traded means that you are very limited in how many of these you get access to. But they are very powerful, and because of the fact that they can't be crafted or traded, we've made sure to juice the mods on them and make sure it's not watered down. These are relics which will significantly affect the character power of your build.
How does the Sanctum work in a party then?
Got a bunch of rules here. Short answer is, as with all recent leagues, we want party play to work, but we also want it so that people don't feel encouraged to cheese things through party play. And so the philosophy basically is, like, one of the problems with Arch Nemesis with the whole culling situation is that players realize when they find a certain monster that, oh, I now have to engage with other humans in order to get maximum result here. We want Sanctum to work in a party without creating the feeling that you have to engage with humans in order to get the best out of your Sanctum. And so the way it works is the Sanctum is always that of the map owner. The person who created the map is the one whose Sanctum you're playing. So if Ziggy and I are playing and we're doing Ziggy's Sanctum, he's the one getting the progress for that. I'm there to help, and afterwards it would be nice if he reciprocated and we did my Sanctum as well, but it's primarily your one that's progressing. If you invite other party members into your Sanctum with you, they don't just get a free ability to have their own resolve bar, which doesn't matter, or they can run around and distract the monsters. You are, as a party, sharing the resolve bar with the map owner, and this means that extra party members can't just go and suicide themselves on stuff to distract the monsters. They actually have to be playing properly. There's a bunch of other small rules there, like party members can view the merchant and view the map, but only the map owner actually makes the choices and purchases stuff. In practice, what this means is it's fun to bring people in and play together. It does give you a small advantage from a combat point of view if you have multiple players, but you do all have to be playing cohesively, so only bring in party members you trust.
Excellent. Does self-inflicted damage affect resolve?
I think it does. There's a lot of shrugging. No, it's only damage that's tagged with affecting your resolve, like ones from the monsters.
Some of the allocatable boss nodes made things more challenging in addition to more rewarding. So, for example, Inevitable Ambush, which added a second Guardian to the Guardian fights. Are things like this made default behavior now, or are they still passives, or are they just gone?
The ones that add extra challenge and rewards are gone for now, but this isn't a we don't like them, they're gone forever. It's a case that we want to bring them back in some form. And we have some plans for this. They probably won't be an at 320 release, but we do have some cool ways where basically the ability to opt in to the challenge and reward is not going to come from the tree because that creates the problems we've discussed, but it will come from somewhere. And so players will be able to get their challenge and reward back for those. But in the meantime, obviously, there's still a lot of ways you can ramp up the juice and challenge from these encounters.
It's not ideal.
Jack was wondering if Atlas Tree will be viewable today alongside patch notes, or is that a little bit later maybe?
I don't think it's today, but our expectation is to release it before release so that you do get a chance to plan around it.
I think a lot of players are very happy to read the manifesto about the replacement of the Arch Nemesis system for rare monsters with a new, more, I guess, Nemesis-like system. Do you think that this new system will still achieve the goals that you set out to achieve with Arch Nemesis, though?
The goal of Arch Nemesis initially was modernization of the effects and their balance. We felt that the old monster mods were just really old. We just basically needed to give them a fresh coat of paint. Now, our fresh coat of paint included some stuff that players didn't like, and so we're trying very hard to make sure the new system does achieve the core goals of Arch Nemesis without having the things that people didn't like. And so to that effect, it now does use modern effects. There's a lot of cool stuff that we weren't doing with the system that was 2 systems ago, and the balance is appropriate for current Path of Exile, so it's definitely ticks those boxes, but at the same time, it's trying to be much more understandable and simple and a bit less in your face than Arch Nemesis was.
How do you feel about the loot conversion system overall? Because I thought this system was quite interesting, but maybe a little bit tainted by how it was implemented.
So we've reviewed the loot conversions and added some new ones, dropped some old ones, like the ones that just gave you piles and piles of flasks, for example. As far as I know, that doesn't exist anymore. And we've gone through and made sure to use the feedback that people have had.
Is this something you've considered doing to map bosses as well? Like, map bosses have definitely gotten better over time in terms of reward and more interesting, which I like. But it still seems like, in a lot of cases, they could get a little spicier.
It's worth looking into. Yeah, we've been focusing
they
this
got away
cycle
from
on trying to get the monster mods into a good place and to scrub all the Arch Nemesis off everything.
Yes. A lot of people in chat asked, how will Headhunter work with the new monster mods?
Okay. This is the first question we're expecting. There are way more mods now, and that means Headhunter players that are getting a lot of mods cap out later. Previously, because there were relatively few Arch Nemesis mods, I mean, there were still dozens to be fair, but there were fewer. Once you've got them all active, you can't get more. Whereas here, there are far more mods, and so you can have far more upper end power. Having said that, these do less than the Arch Nemesis mods because that's what you asked us to do. And so they do implicitly, like at the low end, Headhunter is less powerful. At the high end, Headhunter is more powerful. You pick which is best.
It's a kind of a slower ramp up to a higher potential sort of deal. You asked for this.
And we're calling Headhunter Val Cleave now.
Excellent. Immortalum asks, does that mean no more fractured flasks because of the flask thing being removed?
Do you happen to know that?
Yeah.
Well, the zero flask conversion, that's not been.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the flask conversion is gone. That and the piles of whetstones ones are 2 examples.
The monster drops in the fracture conversion.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll fracture regular flask drops.
Okay. Simple Cookie asks, will the Atlas passive that increase the amount of mods on rare monsters be added back with the new rare monster changes?
Yeah.
I don't think it has been.
Recently you swapped kind of Divine and Exalted orbs around. Now that we've had a league with the various changes surrounding these high-end currencies, I'd like to know, what were the goals of effectively swapping Divines and Exalts, and how effective have the changes been?
Well, the goals were that Exalts were used more for crafting, that someone would actually consider taking an item and using an Exalted orb to get another mod that is random. That's happening now, a lot more than it was before. Secondly, we wanted it to be harder to divine items, not just because we're mean, but because it makes well-rolled uniques more valuable. Previously, because divines were really accessible, well, relatively accessible, it meant that if you have a really rolled unique, it didn't really feel that special because someone can slam a few divines into it to get something like that. Now there is quite a wide variance of stuff. Like, look at something like Brass Dome, for example, where the worst versions of it are worth quite a lot less than the really good ones. And that's more fun, because then you find something that's just a much better version of something that someone else has that's worth less, and you feel good about that. Just cause a bit of a shift in how people value items, so you don't get entrenched values. You don't get people believing, oh, this item is 6x forever. It changes because the game changes.
So for the standard players that are still coping with their stash full of Exalts because they didn't convert them over in time.
This is seriously, like, oh, I had entirely all my money in Bitcoin and now it's worthless, right? Like, diversify, right? Again, economics.
Chris is teaching multiple economics lessons today.
Path of Exile will set you up for life. Have a diversified portfolio of currency items.
Okay.
It's really currency. Keep some rares, keep some crafting stuff.
Oh, everyone was asking about divine shards. Yeah, I see your chat. I see you spamming divine shards. Okay, everyone wants to know, are divine shards going to be a thing? Chris.
They're called chaos orbs. Shards have problems. Okay, so we designed Path of Exile to get away from the concept of there being a homogeneous gold currency in games, right? And I understand every league we do, we introduce gold in it, but that's, within the confines of that particular scope. But overall, in main Path of Exile, we want to make sure that the currency items have fluctuating values relative to each other. It's very important as part of the way that trade works. And so taking something like Divine Orbs that are the de facto currency for high-end trades and adding a granular, proportional, like Divine Sense thing is not something that we would do unless there was a good reason for it. And so we'd have no plans to add divine shards. We think it would potentially be negative. It's okay to use cheaper currency as the divine shards. Like, you can take chaos orbs and turn them into divines through trade or other mechanisms. The value fluctuates, but that's what we want it to be doing.
Does Val Flicker attack one target multiple times? So does it have like boss applications then, or is it more about pack clear?
Against a single target, it will do every single hit against that target.
Very anime. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It is very anime, yes.
El Swego asks, if Soul Taker is going to be so insanely rare, what does this mean for Kingmaker, the item that you can make out of Soul Taker?
I'm just going to smile. We thought of that one.
Okay. Mystery.
Maybe it's been buffed as well.
Oh, okay. Something to be revealed potentially then. I'm getting chat.
That's pretty cool.
Will our Star Forges or Lionized Glares sitting in Standard be buffable to their Headhunter tier strengths with a Divine Orb?
Yep. I know, it's stupid, isn't it? But we had to do that because it's fair and because of divination cards that you could have been hoarding and all the other things. So yeah, you get some free ridiculous items in Standard if you had diversified into them.
Standard chat trade is exploding right now. Spooky asks, Chris, can you please share your current thoughts on the loss of the historic buff to loot? There you go. That's a big one.
So this is one of those tricky things where, like, we feel people completely misunderstood what is there, and like we didn't want to go on a big rant and try to correct people, but we posted some numbers at some point during the league and then left it. But it boils down to this: if you're a regular player playing regular content, as we can see based on like looking at what regular players are doing, and by regular I mean people in red maps, then there is no loss of anything. It's better than it was before. Like, Sentinel is higher than it was previously, and people didn't believe us. They said doubt. They weren't happy with that, so we just stopped trying to push the point. If you were one of those groups that were juicing stuff to insane degrees with 6-person parties and all the crazy stuff going on and using exactly the right league mechanics with exactly the right stuff, then yeah, absolutely there was a nerf there. The community feeling about this was that we nerfed the average person. The communication around the whole thing was poorly done. We didn't explain it, patch note it correctly. We didn't communicate about it. We didn't really understand the nature of the changes fully ourselves. But where we got it to with the buffs we did was better than where it was before, unless you were doing one of the crazy juice situations. And so it was frustrating for us because we felt that the miscommunication the miscommunication is our fault, but we felt the whole situation kind of ran away and caused people to really hate the loot situation more than they should have done. It's just that if you're playing the crazy Imperium style and stuff as we describe it, then you're certainly getting less, and that was an intentional part of the change.
Has there been some sort of change to the way that you're approaching the reveals and the patch noting and stuff? Maybe with how you're describing some things, because you don't historically you've never revealed everything. There's a lot of stuff that's considered not in patch notable changes, for example. Has that changed at all over time?
Historically, we've tried very hard not to talk about drop rate changes. If we feel that something drops too often, we'll just change it. And for decades, well, not decades, but more than a decade, we have followed that policy. Having said that, we should have talked about the changes to the quantity and rarity bonuses from different league content, because it does affect decisions people are making. There was stuff before that was really juicy and everyone wanted to play that, and we tried to make it more fair so that the leagues are roughly equal, and that's something that should have been communicated more clearly, and we certainly learned the lesson there. And the lack of communication there was not malicious. It was entirely just ignorance on our part. There was miscommunications internally. I missed the memo almost literally, and that meant that it wasn't as much part of the marketing as it should have been. And we certainly have tried very hard this time not to make the same mistake again.
All right. Good to hear. Thank you very much for the insights, Chris, and thank you for spending this time together with us, the Q&A. I'll let you get to it, and we'll let him release the patch notes so that everyone can have a read. Thank you very much.
Enjoy, everyone. Thanks so much.
That was an interesting end.
Yeah, I was about to say, ending on a bit of a sour note. I mean, jeez Louise.
Do you feel like Loot is a lot worse?
Okay, I've been consistent with my opinion on this. It was worse before the buffs. It's better after the buffs for the average player. I am not the average player. I only represented my own experiences. And for me, someone who did do Beyond, it was way worse.
Like obviously, like in Hard Crisis F, until you get to Beyond farming, like I definitely feel like I had like more stuff than before. Alright, I guess we're about to get patch notes. Honestly though, like mostly good things, I'm pretty hyped still.
Oh, it looked really exciting, but they always look exciting.
That's true.
So
the roguelike stuff, although I'm very worried about the whole like you have to do it in every map.
Oh, that's gonna be awful, but I mean we've gone through this radio before.
Yeah.
It looks fun though. It does look fun though. I do like the idea. It looks really fun. So that was fun.
Problem, dude. Thank you so much for doing it with me. I love you, buddy.
Yeah.
Good luck reading the patch notes.
Oh, I mean, I should tell that to you. I mean,
Why?
Yeah.
Oh, because I can't read.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Love you, buddy. Bye.
All right. See you.